from the standpoint of your decision making, why is it important that a police officer be credible?
An officer would need to be credible to perform their functions in the confidence of the public as well as in the confidence of the court. Being able to testify that what they're saying is accurate and consistent to the best of their ability with the events that occurred. And without that, I don't believe an individual could be, or remain an officer.
The case would go after it's completed.
Who gets disciplined for violating an internal affairs SOP?
Any officer would get.
Why weren't you? Were you told to give that directly to Deputy Alan Banks?
Yes, it was.
Who told you?
I believe it was the chief of police at the time.
Chief of police was involved specifically at this level with this investigation?
I had asked him about the case since it was about 5 years old. I said, obviously there's different chains of command now. There's different officers under different area commands. I said, should I send this, to the area command? And I believe his direction was just to send it to the deputy chief because of about a 5-year difference.
I think we're going to continue on with cross-examination of Deputy Chief Banks. Is that the understanding of everybody?
That's the understanding, and I would just remind you you're still under oath.
Yes, sir. I understand.
I hope you've told the truth totally from the last month or so.
Yes, sir.
Because you've been under oath.
So, Deputy Chief, just to kind of review a few things, just so that we can get focused a little bit back. My understanding was that you've testified under oath that Chief Schultz terminated my client, correct?
The city of Albuquerque terminated your client, and Chief Schultz made the recommendation for termination. After my recommendation, it went to a disciplinary hearing in which it was sustained, and he was terminated.
My specific question to you, though, was, just in review, and I think you said something different just then, are you in agreement with me, as you've testified under oath already, that Chief Schultz terminated my client?
And again, my same answer would be, and what I reiterated when we went through our testimony prior, is when you first asked the question, I said, yes, Chief Schultz did terminate your client, and then I clarified how the process went in regards to your client, sir.
Well, could you tell me who signed the paper? The final, you are terminated paper. Who signed it?
If you ask me who signed the paper,
yeah, it should be an exhibit, and it should be.
If it's an exhibit and I look at the exhibit and you're okay with that, I can tell you who signed it. Based on my knowledge of how the process went, I can give you that testimony.
Okay.
And
what I'd like to do, if I could just follow up with
it
questions. You know what? I'm going to hand you the transcripts from the last hearing. Okay, these in the first page specifically deals with that. It says on the bottom on page 6, you're asking it, Mr. Hearing Officer. Okay, who made the decision? If you look at the next page, and this is you, Deputy Chief Banks, responding to terminate the grievance. You or and Mr. Banks, no, sir, but all I do is review the case and make recommendations and findings and forward it to the court. Who made the final decision to terminate the grievance? It says, Chief, you can't testify, sorry, we'll swear you in as a witness. Then you say, Chief Schultz makes the final determination. And then, did he in this case? Your response, sir, was, yes, sir, he did under recommendations, yes, sir, that's correct. So, is it still your testimony today, sir, that Chief Schultz, as it is on line 20, page 7 of this transcript that you've already testified to, Chief Schultz makes the final determination?
And what I said, just like I did in the last time you asked the same exact question, was at that time I did say, yes, Chief Schultz makes the final recommendations. And I also said the clarification based on the process is the recommendations went from me to Chief Schultz, who did a recommendation of termination. I believe he went out of town or was unable to do his predisciplinary hearing or his laudermill, which Chief Feist at the time, Deputy Chief Feist at the time, made those final recommendations.
Look to line 22 of page 7 of your previous transcript. It's line 22. It is this hearing officer, if you look at the bottom, it's just the second page, sir. Page 7 it says on the bottom, line 22. He asks you, Chief, and then did he in this case? Do you see that? Talking about Chief Schultz? You said, yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so he did in this case then. That's the answer, yes or no?
I have the same testimony. As far as I know, Deputy Chief Feist did the pre-disciplinary hearing for the final recommendation of termination. Chief Schultz also made a recommendation of termination.
You say you make a recommendation. I want to hear from you. Did he terminate him or not? It's a simple question, yes or no.
Was he terminated? Yes.
Did Chief Schultz terminate him?
Don't know.
Then why, under oath, the first time you were here, you said he did to this hearing officer?
And I clarified it as well after, except this is what the process was.
Why do you get a chance to clarify your answers, but when he's asked 3 years between various depositions, you say he's lying and not being forthright?
He had 4 opportunities to clarify his answers over those years, sir.
And B reflects an Albuquerque Journal story on the morning of Friday, July 29th, saying that the chief was announcing to the community that he's firing a police officer, right?
That's what it says.
And that would have been Russell Perea, correct?
I object. What calls for speculation?
I haven't read it. Does it say Russell Perea in here?
No, it does not.
Okay.
It calls for speculation.
Fair enough, sir. This article involves the Levi Chavez matter?
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody else that was fired other than Levi Chavez in this matter?
Other than Levi Chavez?
Yeah. Russell Perea?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
No, sir.
Okay. Levi Chavez at the time of this article had already been fired, right? It says it.
Well, if there's only one person.
Well, I'm questioning the witness about whether the news article is correct or not. First, you have to ask him whether he knows.
Okay. Do you know if we were talking about any other officer here at Deputy Chief Banks other than Russell Perea, sir?
I do not know.
Okay. Do you think we're talking about any other officer other than Russell Perea, this article?
I do not know.
Chief Banks, I want you to be completely forthright, as you've required my client apparently to be through every interview. Here's my question. Do you think they're talking about Russell Perea here?
I was not involved in the conversation with the Journal nor this article, and I would hate to speculate what Chief Schultz and the article has discussed.
So you're unwilling to even tell me whether or not, based on your deputy chief status, your understanding of the timing of this and the pre-disciplinary hearing notice that he received, you're unwilling to even tell this hearing officer that, yeah, this was about Russell Perea. The department, in this particular instance, had already made up their mind to fire him before he even got to go in for his plea disciplinary hearing. Correct or not?
You say fire him. Are you referring to the article or are you referring to the case? You're confusing me.
Mr. Banks, are we really going to play these games? You know they're talking about Russell Perea, right?
Mr. Brakeman.
I don't talk to you. Talk to me.
No. I object.
I think
we've objected repeatedly that the article does not.
I will sustain the objection.
Okay. We've talked about, and let me just follow up just to make sure I'm clear. You have made a very large distinction between untruthfulness and not being forthright. Correct?
If you say so, sir, yes.
Well, it's not.
No, maybe you're having a problem with the word large. Did you make a distinction between being forthright and being truthful?
Yes, sir. I believe I did. Yes.
Okay. Now, what's the SOP talk about? Is it truthfulness or is it being unforthright?
The SOP talks about being truthful, untruthful. Talks about being cooperative in an investigation, giving the information that is asked for.
Okay. So you agree with me that there is nowhere where you can absolutely say, based on what you've already testified to in the previous hearings, there is no place you can point out where he lied. Is that correct?
No, sir. I don't think that's correct.
Then, and we're going to have to go through this because it's important. Tell me specifically what statement came out of his mouth that was a lie. Was it in the deposition?
In the deposition, when he talked, yes, it would be in the deposition after the question.
Okay. So I want you then to do me a favor, sir. If it's in the deposition, I want you to, you see the Exhibit A that I hand you, those transcripts?
Yes, sir.
Let's look at the highlight on the very last page. And
60.
yeah, the last one. And I highlight that and I say, I want you to specifically tell me, did he lie or not in the deposition of Brad Hall? And your response then was no.
That's correct.
So, were you lying when you answered no the time before, or are you lying now?
I'm not lying in either case, sir.
So, today you said he did lie, and last time you were under oath you said no. And you think those are consistent answers?
No, sir, they're not consistent answers.
Okay. Then which one's the truth?
When you look at, and even in the transcripts here, when you talked about being truthful and unforthright, what I said was he did not give all the information. He was not entirely truthful. He did give some inconsistent statements. He was not forthcoming in some statements. And we talked about the difference between an outright lie and being untruthful.
It was different. But tell me, did he lie or did he withhold an answer about text messages? Because you said when he answered the question about whether or not he saw text messages, do you know whether or not Russell Perea saw Levi Chavez making an enormous amount of text messages?
Okay, I did not understand your question, so I apologize.
To this day, do you know specifically whether or not Russell Perea saw Levi Chavez make an enormous amount of text messages?
Do I know personally?
Yes.
Just based on his testimony, one time he's telling Aaron Jones that he did see him making a lot of text messages.
And one time he said he didn't?
And then when he talked to Brett Hall, he's saying that he did not see a lot of phone calls. And
kind of similar to what you did last time when I asked you whether or not he lied, and this time you said yes, last time you said no, right?
I don't think so, sir.
What's the difference?
Could you clarify?
What's the difference between what you're making a very fine distinction of whether or not he said yes or no, or how he said to text messages being made, and you're saying that he lied because he didn't say something else. On the other hand, I have you giving two completely different answers in two different hearings, but yet you were completely truthful the whole time. I don't understand how that's possible.
I don't think I'm giving two different answers. I'm answering the questions as you're asking them, and I think Mr. Perea was given several opportunities, and he gave several different answers to the questions that were asked of him.
You've been given several opportunities, and you've given several different answers on various questions, haven't you?
I don't think.
Do you consider profanity as serious as untruthfulness? Yes or no?
Yes, I do. I think any violation is going to be serious. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Now, what's your definition of serious, or how do you define your seriousness?
No, he said, do you consider them, and let's go back to the page if we need to make sure we understand what he said. The court asked you, they're equally serious in your mind.
Yes, sir.
And you said, yes, 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 sir, they are.
Yes, sir.
Today, do you consider them equally serious in your mind?
Yes, sir.
So, can you tell me, as a deputy chief of the City of Albuquerque Police Department, when was the decision made to fire Russell Perea? When does the actual decision take place?
And I don't know if deputy chief, that correlation has to do anything. I don't know.
Well, deputy chief, let's talk about what your role as deputy chief. You're a deputy chief, correct?
That is correct.
Is that the second highest rank in the chain of command of the police department?
Yes, sir, it is.
And so do you think at this point you would be expected to have a clear understanding of the termination procedures in the City of Albuquerque?
You have to repeat that question.
Do you think at this point in your career, with 3 stars on your collar, and a deputy chief rank, a badge that says deputy chief, that you would understand when it is that someone's fired from APD?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When was it when Russell Perea was fired from APD? What day?
I don't know what day. I'm sure it was after his predisciplinary hearing.
It was after that hearing?
I'm assuming he was terminated after his predisciplinary. I don't know. I said I did the recommendations on this case, and I passed it forward, and I didn't have an involvement after that point. So.
Okay. So it's not on July 29th that he was fired?
As far as I know, no.
Did you have any discussions with Deputy Chief Feist about this case?
Of course I did.
Between Friday morning, July 29th, and August 9th, when he held a Lattimore hearing?
No, sir, I didn't believe I did. I don't remember if I did or not.
Go through it, you can tell me, not being a police person, which is more significant about these inconsistencies, because couldn't it be that some of them are minor, some of them are major, some of them are... Which ones weighed most heavily on your mind in making a recommendation to terminate his employment? That's what I'd like to know.
I did not make a recommendation. It
Okay.
was based on this. I followed through with the recommendations to
But
fire
you conducted the predetermination hearing.
Yes.
You didn't make a recommendation following the hearing?
No, then I made the decision.
You made the final decision.
Yes.
Good. We now know who made the final decision.
I made the final
You
decision.
made it.
Yes.
So when by the way, when Alan Banks said that the chief, he said it 2 different times, the very first day, and then again last hearing, when he said that the chief fired him, he was wrong.
Correct.
Are you going to start an IA complaint against Chief Banks for making another false statement?
No.
Why not?
Because he was testifying to, or answering your questions, and I believe he answered to the best of his ability.
Even though they were wrong?
My opinion would have been different, yes.
Don't you think a deputy chief that comes in to testify before this hearing about someone's career should actually know the truth before he answers questions?
I think he answered to the best of his ability.
He doesn't have much of a